Welcome to The Explainer. So let's jump right into one of the most profound and, honestly, tragic mysteries in the entire history of science. I want you to imagine a mind so brilliant that it could simply look at the universe and pull down equations that no one else could even comprehend. Now, imagine that mind belongs to a poor clerk in India, a young man who never completed a university degree, yet somehow managed to completely reshape modern mathematics. Today, we're unpacking the incredible story of Srinivasa Ramanujan. We're going to explore this massive clash of two very different worlds and figure out how a mind born in total poverty managed to see the very fabric of reality.
Picture this. It's 1913. G.H. Hardy, who is this highly respected elite mathematician at Cambridge University, is opening his mail. And he finds this strange letter from a 23-year-old in Madras, India. The sender introduces himself super humbly, saying he's just an accounts clerk earning a tiny salary and openly admits, hey, I don't have a university education. But attached to this polite little introduction are 9 pages densely packed with mathematical equations. There are no detailed proofs, no formal academic structures. Just these startling, almost impossible-looking formulas that claim to solve mathematical problems that had literally baffled the greatest minds in history.
Now, Hardy's first thought? Obviously, he suspects a hoax. He thinks it's a prank. I mean, wouldn't you? But the thing is, he just can't stop thinking about those 9 pages. So he brings in his brilliant colleague John Littlewood, and they spend hours agonizing over the math. And by midnight, that suspicion had completely turned into sheer awe. They realized, okay, we're not looking at a prank here. We are looking at the work of a genius of the absolute highest caliber. The math was so incredibly advanced that they knew human imagination alone couldn't have faked it.
So where does a mind like this actually come from? To understand how Ramanujan could produce such unbelievable work, we have to look at his roots. He grew up in a poor family, but they belonged to the Brahmins, which is the highest caste in India's traditional hierarchy. Historically, they served as teachers and priests. The key takeaway here is that for his family, public displays of luxury or chasing money were seriously frowned upon. What truly mattered was living a life of deep mental and spiritual focus. He was raised in this very rigid, deeply religious framework where pursuing knowledge was an actual spiritual duty, not just a way to get rich.
Get this, when he was just 13 years old, his math teacher was explaining that dividing anything by itself always equals 1, right? Like if you divide 3 fruits among 3 people, everyone gets 1. Well, Ramanujan basically stopped the class in its tracks with a mind-bending question. He asked, if no fruits are divided among no one, will each still get 1? At 13, he was already thinking in these crazy realms of infinity and zero that standard school curriculums just couldn't handle. And because he cared about absolutely nothing but math, he completely neglected his other subjects, like Roman history. He actually failed his college exams and lost the scholarship that was supposed to be his one ticket out of poverty.
Okay, so here's the million-dollar question. How does a college dropout learn the most advanced mathematics on the planet? Well, at 16, he got his hands on a book called Carr's Book of Formulas. Now, this wasn't some grand, enlightening textbook. It was this dry, completely outdated exam prep book that just listed 5,000 equations with practically 0 proofs. For a normal student, trying to learn from this would be an absolute nightmare. But for Ramanujan, it was the ultimate puzzle book. He tackled these equations completely on his own, and in the process, he learned to rely entirely on his pure intuition rather than the rigorous, step-by-step proofs that Western academia demanded.
And this incredibly isolated, self-taught method lined up perfectly with his deep Hindu faith. His belief was absolute. He once said, "An equation for me has no meaning unless it expresses a thought of God." Ramanujan prayed regularly to his family's goddess, Namagiri. He didn't think of mathematics as something humans invented. He firmly believed that these complex formulas were literally divine messages whispered to him by the gods, giving him a direct window into the hidden structure of the universe.
So, you can see the monumental clash we're setting up here, right? On one side, we have Ramanujan, a devout Hindu, totally self-taught, living in poverty, pulling intuitive math straight from the divine. On the exact opposite side, across the ocean, we have G.H. Hardy, an outspoken atheist, part of the ultra-privileged Cambridge elite, deeply rooted in a world where rigorous, step-by-step proof is quite literally the only thing that matters. When Hardy writes back inviting Ramanujan to England, he is setting the stage for a collision of two diametrically opposed realities.
But there was a massive cultural roadblock. As a Brahmin, crossing the ocean was strictly forbidden. Doing so meant he could be expelled from his caste, completely shunned by his family, and banned from his temple. His mother, who held immense influence over his entire life, flat out refused to let him go. The breakthrough actually only happened because of a dream.
His mother dreamed of the goddess Namagiri, who specifically commanded her not to stand in the way of her son's destiny. That divine permission was the only thing that finally allowed Ramanujan to board a ship for England in 1914.
Once he actually gets to Cambridge, the true, terrifying scale of Ramanujan's genius becomes apparent. Let's look at calculating pi, for example. For centuries, Western mathematicians had been using methods like Leibniz's formula. That required adding millions of terms together just to get a few correct decimal places. Ramanujan created a brand new formula where adding just one single term gave you the first 8 digits of pi perfectly. I mean, that is a level of mathematical efficiency and pure insight that literally outclassed centuries of European academia in one fell swoop.
He had this intimate, almost conversational relationship with numbers. There's a really famous story from a time when Ramanujan was sick in bed. Hardy came to visit him, and he had ridden over in a taxi cab. Just trying to make some small talk, Hardy complained that his cab number, 1729, was a rather dull number, and muttered that he hoped it wasn't a bad omen. Ramanujan didn't even skip a beat. He immediately replied, "No, it is a very interesting number." He instantly knew, right off the top of his head, that 1729 is the smallest number that can be expressed as the sum of 2 cubes in 2 different ways. 1 cubed plus 12 cubed, and 9 cubed plus 10 cubed. He didn't work this out on a chalkboard, he just knew it. Numbers were like his close personal friends. Today, mathematicians literally call these taxicab numbers to honor that exact brilliant conversation. But look, while his mind was soaring, his physical reality in England was rapidly turning into a nightmare. The compounding hardships were just breaking him down. First of all, he arrived right as World War I erupted. His academic colleagues left for the war, plunging him into extreme isolation. The freezing English climate was a total shock to his system. And crucially, wartime rationing made it nearly impossible for him to maintain his strict Brahmin vegetarian diet. He ended up surviving on little more than rice, salt, and lemon juice. There's this one story that absolutely breaks your heart, and it brilliantly illustrates just how alien his new world was. During a really bitter winter, a visiting student found Ramanujan huddled by his fireplace, absolutely freezing, having slept in his overcoat. When the student checked the bed, he found the thick English blankets neatly folded and tucked away. Ramanujan literally did not know how to use them. He had never seen them before. It's a deeply empathetic anecdote that really underscores the immense culture shock and the painful lack of basic comfort he had to endure while he was out there rewriting the laws of mathematics. Eventually, driven to absolute despair by malnutrition, a suspected case of tuberculosis, and just crushing loneliness, his mental health totally collapsed. At his absolute lowest point, he stood on the platform of a London Underground station and threw himself onto the tracks right in front of an oncoming train. Miraculously, a guard pulled the emergency switch and stopped the train just feet away. Attempted suicide was a crime back then, so he was arrested. It was only Hardy's desperate intervention at Scotland Yard, pulling every string he had with his academic status, that kept Ramanujan out of jail and saved his career.
His final years were this chaotic, rapid-fire trajectory of dizzying highs and devastating lows. He arrived in England in 1914. By 1918, even amidst severe illness, he achieved the ultimate academic triumph. He was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society. He was one of the youngest ever, permanently placing his name alongside giants like Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin. But his body was completely failing him. In 1919, he finally returned home to India, stepping off the boat as a fundamentally changed, depressed, and broken man. And in 1920, the timeline abruptly ends.
He was just 32 years old when he passed away. A mind that held the actual secrets of the universe extinguished way, way too early.
But here's the incredible part. Even in his final days, the math never stopped. Bedridden, in intense pain, and reduced to skin and bones, he just kept writing feverishly. His young wife would sit by his side, physically feeding him rice balls by hand, just so he wouldn't have to put down his pen. In those final moments, he wrote to Hardy about these things called Mach theta functions, mysterious equations that absolutely no one understood at the time. Decades later, scientists realized that these very equations actually help explain the behavior of black holes, and they are literally still being studied by string theorists today.
Ramanujan told his wife on his deathbed that his name would live for 100 years, and he was right. But his story leaves us with a heavy, profound question to wrap up this explainer. Think about it. How many other world-changing, brilliant minds are currently lost to poverty, or to the wrong caste, or to rigid, broken educational systems today? If one poor clerk in Madras could see the thoughts of God in numbers, who else is out there right now, just waiting for someone to read their letter? Thank you so much for joining me on this one, and keep questioning the world around you.